Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? We're back Monday night. We are live across the universe. It's a glorious Monday night here in the UK, but we didn't want to share that with just the UK. We wanted to go global. We brought a returning guest, and oh my goodness, is it a banger. Before we get to today's guest, although if you are watching on YouTube, you already know who it is. Before, for the audio peeps, big man, how you doing?
Yeah, good. It's May next week. Years flying by.
I know.
Sun is shining. We're almost out of COVID lockdown. 3 weeks from now, you and I can be in the studio and record together. And we've not done that for 15 months.
Nope.
So that is going to be pretty cool. But yeah, it's all good. And I love today's guest. I'm so glad he's come back because I'm a big fan of his, have been for years. So I'm going to cut the intro. Let's get into our guy here because he's just awesome. And I'm looking forward to this. He's my favorite Newcastle United supporter.
Staying up. We're staying up.
You are. You have Arsenal to thank for that, for Joe Willock as well.
Yes, exactly. Let's get a takeover going. Newcastle, of course, tried to ride on the coattails of the Super League and just be like, let's raise the value of our franchise before all the fans revolted. But
the Super League, that was all breaking down. So we had stepmom Lauren on last week, and that was all breaking up. As I was recording, my phone was going crazy. I mean, that might be. I'm trying to think what was longer, Antonio Brown to the Bills or the Super League. That would be an interesting breakdown to see which one lasted longer. I think the Super League.
I think it was the Super League. Yeah, Antonio Brown was just like, I'm not going to the Bills. and then there wasn't really a Twitter revolt about him. But anyway, guys, it's wonderful to be back.
So if you are not aware of who today's guest is, it's Joe Dolan. He's pretty much the most accurate fantasy football ranker on planet Earth, and I'm assuming the universe. Joe, you've been top 5 for the last 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, and I don't want to mislead people. We didn't put our rankings in the Fantasy Pros system this year. That's an entirely other conversation. But heading into launching fantasypoints.com, we had a lot of success with our rankings at the old Fantasy Guru site. And at the 1 year sabbatical Tom Brawley and I took at fantasyfreeagents.com. We had a lot of success putting the rankings in up there. But yeah, we've had some success doing that. I think, people always ask me what the secret was, and I think it's kind of common sense. And also the fact that it over rewarded almost being a little conservative, because you could, for instance, you guys know how some guy, a running back, for instance, let's just throw a name like Jordan Howard out there as the quintessential boring running back, might finish as RB21 on the season in full points, while Nyheim Hines might finish RB38. But Nyheim Hines ended up being the more valuable fantasy player because of his spike week. So there was ways that I used to really like to look at this and say, hey, I like Nyheim Hines a lot more than Jordan Howard, but he's going to outscore. Is he going to outscore him for the full season? So there were ways to do that. But doing that breakdown also helped you understand ADP and understand where to exploit things. And I'm sure we'll get into all that, but it's good to be back here. And I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity.
Look, it's great to have you back. Obviously, when you were last on, you gave us a heads up privately. We couldn't talk about it, and we didn't, about Fantasy Points. You obviously started a business in the pandemic. How was year one of Fantasy Points? You see you rocking the merch now as well. We can see that.
It was rewarding. But the problem was, guys, I'm sure you guys are well aware of this, was we launched in April. And we're trying to create this. It was so frustrating. We had set up this team over the course of 18 months, really, bringing in Graham Barfield and bringing in Scott Barrett and reuniting me and Hansen and Brawley from our time with Fantasy Guru, and bringing in again Adam Kaplan and Greg Cosell and putting all this team together. And we had done this over the course of 18 months. And in March, 1 month before we're supposed to launch, the COVID crisis goes worldwide. I think we all remember where we were when Rudy Gobert tested positive and the NBA season shut down, and you still didn't know, you were scared, but then you get on Twitter and you're like, I'm posting the logo and I'm so excited, I'm back with my friends and we're excited for this project, and you get people in your Twitter mention, and Twitter's a toxic place, we know that, but you get people in your Twitter mention saying, why would I pay for a website when there's not going to be a season, and there's not, you idiots, why are you working, there's not going to be a season. And it was hard to like put the blinders on and focus on the fact that there could be a season. And I don't think any of us knew exactly what was going to happen, but I got to be honest with you guys, the first time where I felt like in any way close to normal was the NFL draft last season. And although it was like the Zoom draft and Roger Goodell's in his basement and all the prospects are, at home and they're being live streamed, there was a level of normalcy with that draft. I thought the NFL did a great job putting it on. ESPN, the NFL Network, kind of teaming up to broadcast. I thought they did a great job. And then that was when I started to feel decent about head down, power through. But it was tough. And it's impossible for us to say, how the pandemic affected our subscription numbers, because there might have been a lot of people, even in September, guys, like who were like, should we do a fantasy draft? Like we like to say our fantasypoints.com subscription appeals to casuals and hardcores alike, but any website out there is going to tell you, with the exception of maybe the heavy DFS focused sites like a Roto Grinders, every website out there is going to tell you a huge portion, like a massive portion of your subscription numbers for fantasy football come in August and September. And last year we had cases worldwide spiking in August and September. Oh, they might start the season, but they're not going to finish it. Why would I play fantasy? Why am I going to play fantasy when I have to create rules to put guys on COVID IR? And what if I'm heading into a Sunday and I got a big matchup, and I mean, this did happen, and my team doesn't even have a quarterback because the Denver Broncos had to play without a quarterback. So I think it's impossible for us to know exactly how much that affected the consumption of the content. But overall, I thought we did a nice job in our first season in handling the slings and arrows and the punches as they came. And we're really excited for 2021. There's a lot we can do better. I think we all were, anybody in any job last year was adjusting on the fly. So there's a lot we can do better, but we're excited for 2021. And I'm excited to have an NFL draft where there's people there and Goodell's hugging people. I think we all are really excited for something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an amazing contrast to hear you talk about that, whereas everyone in the UK here was absolutely, I wouldn't say nailed on that there was going to be a season, but we were ultimately so much more confident it was going to happen. People did drafts. In fact, we had the opposite because everyone here was locked down and couldn't do anything. People did too many drafts. I think we did too many drafts. Everyone we know did too many drafts. We actually had the opposite effect that come March, April, May, everyone was drafting. Everyone was doing startup dynasty drafts. Everyone was doing loads of rookie drafts. Everyone was doing best balls. I did like 150 best balls last year because I was at home and it was just broke the time up. And we actually had a situation. I was in some leagues last year where people would quit midway through the season because they were in too many leagues. Commissioners started too many leagues, couldn't run them. And we're now actually we've seen a lot of it where dynasties that started up last year aren't going to continue because the commission isn't paying attention and it's all kind of dropped off. But hey, we had the opposite effect here. It was crazy in terms of everyone was just drafting everyone because everyone wanted something normal. Everyone wanted that hope and the belief, and we knew the season was going to have blips. We knew it was going to be difficult and challenges, and people were just determined to ride it out here. People were just like, do you know what? There's no Premier League. There's no sport anywhere. I remember when the Bundesliga came back and that was a thing for 2 weeks. Everyone was like, wow, the Bundesliga, there's sport on TV, the Bundesliga. Yeah. And everyone was watching the Bundesliga. Like, we had no sport for, I think, about 80 days. 80 days of
NASCAR here. And I had never been a car racing fan. And like, but it was on TV, and then we were like, oh, and I have a buddy who's a big NASCAR fan, and he's texted me, he's like, all right, no, this is what you need to watch. And it was just fun to watch competition. But I will say this, I did do a lot of best ball drafts, and again, maybe to try to create that sense of normalcy. And frankly, it was also, best ball to me is the best way to prepare, like myself, it's not like, I mean, I've been good at it. I've had a lot of success in best ball in the recent years, but for me, I wouldn't be able to do my job in August and September if I'm not doing best balls in May and June. It's just the way it is. Like I always like to say that the mock draft is dead, like going to Yahoo and picking your draft slot because you're drafting with your buddies in a week, and somebody then takes the Chargers defense in the first round, like that doesn't happen in best balls. And if it does, well, thank you for your donation, sir. I was still doing a lot of that, but there was always that tenseness. Like, we know we're trying to, I had just taken a year off from having a full-time job because of what happened when I resigned from Fantasy Guru, and, we had some legal issues. And I wasn't planning on going without a salary. My wife was going through grad school to get her PhD. So in 2019, we had a home where neither of us was on a salary. And the fact that 2020 came along, and I'm like, finally, I'm going to own my own company and I'm going to have money again. And then this thing happened. I mean, there was a level of stress there too, almost like almost trying to will the season forward because I couldn't go 2 years without a salary. And what we would have had to do is we put it in our terms of service that if you signed up for Fantasy Guru, for Fantasy Points in 2020 and there was no season, your subscription would carry into 2021. That's what would happen. And fortunately, we didn't have to do that. And I just hope everybody had a lot of fun playing fantasy football and is out there staying healthy and hoping we can get back to some level of normalcy here over the next couple of months. But I know we're all excited for the draft coming up.
Absolutely. Last thing on Fantasy Points, you guys do a terrific job. Greg Cosell's draft guide is out there now. But what are you doing this year? Have you got anything that you can share with our listeners to get them over to fantasypoints.com? I mean, you should subscribe anyway. I'm actually in the process of buying a house, but once that process is done and my finances have not been scrutinized with every single subscription, my subscription will be going in. But for those who perhaps aren't aware of Fantasy Points for whatever reason, I don't know why, what are you doing differently this year? What's going to get people to hit that subscribe button? Other than the fact we should say that they should, because it's a phenomenal site with amazing people.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to expand on the things that made it successful. The focus in 2020 was to get the content right and, get some baseline tools on the website and put the focus on the content as opposed to the functionality of the website in terms of all the bells and whistles you can do. One thing we did at fantasypoints.com last year is build a draft tool, kind of like a draft optimizer, a draft guide, something to hold your hand. We built that from the ground up. It's native to us. We built a DFS optimizer from the ground up. It is native to us. And, the thing that we were able to do with that was we were able to keep costs lower. So I think we have a very good value in terms of if you don't want to subscribe to a DFS site where you have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if you're not a power DFS player and you just like to dabble, you can get our optimizer on our website and it's for a very low cost. It was part of our premium package last year because we want to expand the functionality of it. It's a little bit of an add-on this year, but the costs are still low. I think we're the best value in fantasy, but it was built on what we did last year. Obviously, Scott Barrett and Graham Barfield were really good on the DFS end and the stat end. We brought in Wes Huber, formerly of Pro Football Focus, who's doing a lot of dynasty and DFS content. He is now full-time with our website. Coming in the next couple of weeks, Scott actually introduced me to a young man by the name of Jeff Henderson, who developed a fantasy wins above replacement metric that we are going to host natively on the website. And it's a descriptive stat that we're going to use in kind of ways to look at what are some optimal draft strategies. We have some other names in the industry who we haven't announced yet who are going to be coming on board to just contribute to the website. And ultimately, I think we're just going to be not flying by the seat of our pants so much anymore. You know, one role that I've taken on much more recently, or much more heavily recently, I'm officially the managing editor of the website, but I'll be completely frank, I didn't do a whole lot of editing last year. Like we were all scrambling by the seat of our pants. We wanted to make our own mark on the website, so to speak. And I had this huge ass column that took up way too much of my time. And this year I'm going to be kind of I'm going to be the binding agent. I'm going to be like the eggs in your pancakes. You know, I'm going to make sure everything kind of gels together content-wise, and we have a much better continuity of content. And that's one thing we really like at Fantasy Points. We're a team. We all have our own opinions, but we really like to have weekly that one set of rankings, that one set of projections. So we're not like, oh, there's 14 different sets of projections. And that was the one thing about the Fantasy Pros contest was we only had one set of projections on there. Like we didn't have 15 different guys doing 15 different sets of projections. And then, you know, 3 of us finish in the top 15 and we could say, oh, look at this, you know, amazing. We had one set when we were doing that. And that's what we do. And I think my role this year is going to be to kind of coagulate all of that and make it more, make sure everybody knows where we stand and have just a unified vision across our betting package, across our DFS package. Not to say we don't have different opinions. Hey, I like this guy a little bit more than you do, but that kind of stuff will be reflected in the projections this year. And that's going to be my role overall. And I'm excited for it.
Love that. It's a great website. Like I said, I subscribed last year. I'm going to subscribe this year. I urge everyone to. But let's talk a little bit about your 2020 season. We've talked a little bit about how it was a bit haywire. We weren't sure if it was going to go ahead. But how was your season as a whole? And then on top of that, what are some of the key takeaways and learnings you're going to take from that 2020 season and use that to get better in 2021?
Well, number one, I took down an NFFC contest this year. Not the main event, I wish, but I want to thank our friends at the NFFC for my new entertainment center. Thanks, guys. And taking down one of their $150 best ball leagues and making it to the playoffs in that, and that was a lot of fun. So I want to thank them for that. But otherwise, I had some tough luck in best ball, like in terms of like some of my quarterbacks. Like I was heavy in on Dak Prescott, and that didn't work. And for reasons, I was heavy in on Carson Wentz, and that didn't work for other reasons. But you know, making sure that I had a lot of Josh Allen and stuff like that really helped. But some of the lessons I need to learn is. And I learned this big time because my 2 biggest misses, I would say this year, were on 2 guys I wasn't drafting. And that was on Stephon Diggs and Keenan Allen. And I really need to look at talent and say sometimes talent wins out and sometimes teams have a plan for these guys. And, you know, I think when Stephon Diggs went to the Bills, we're all like, oh my God, you know, he got so frustrated with Kirk Cousins. How's he going to feel when Josh Allen sails a pass 10 yards over his head? And that didn't happen. It didn't happen at all. I don't think anybody would have predicted Stephon Diggs was going to lead the NFL in receptions. Like, I don't think anybody predicted the Bills were going to be that pass heavy. And then ultimately you have to look and say, maybe talent wins out and coaching wins out. And when teams trade like that and a good organization like Buffalo trades a 1st-round pick for Diggs, you have a plan for him. Keenan Allen, I completely missed on because number one, I thought Tyrod Taylor was going to be the starter for some time. And, you know, he never supports a high volume passing game. But I frankly would have told you guys last year at this time that if you told me Justin Herbert was going to start 15 games or the way he did, I wouldn't have been on Keenan Allen either because he was a rookie quarterback. And frankly, I mean, I think Justin Herbert blew away a lot of people's expectations, but Keenan Allen's just a high level player who played in, I think, with a high level rookie quarterback. I don't know if anybody anticipated that, but you know, when you're getting a discount on guys like that who are still in their prime, are still putting up quality numbers, even when things change, we need to take a look at that and ask the question, why are those guys going late? Are we too scared of them? And that's a lesson that I need to take into best ball this year. And full disclosure, I don't do best ball until after the NFL draft. I have people who disagree with me completely about that. There's a lot of people who think there's so much value in drafting rookies before they land, and that's fine. It's just not the way I've had success in the past. So that's just the way I prefer to play it. And if you take that or leave it the way you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So just based on that one learning then, who are your guys right now, if you've looked at the ADP, they're going to fit into that profile for you in terms of that talent at a discount?
I got one. This is good. See, I think it's a spicy one because it's going to piss people off. So I have to look at it like that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Really? Okay.
Because he made people so mad that, and I understand it. But now you're going to get this back who we know can catch the football. I know they brought Darrell Williams back, but Damian Williams is gone. I don't know if they're going to make a move at running back in the draft or not. But I just feel like we always like to say, oh, running back, it's the easiest position to get accustomed to in the NFL, and guys can get plugged right in. And what's kind of funny was it was the receivers like Justin Jefferson who ended up having great impact early and often. Meanwhile, your Jonathan Taylors, your Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Swift, a lot of these guys struggled to acclimate early on. Teams were more comfortable with some of the options that they already had in the building. The Lions, too much so, with Peterson and Kerryon Johnson. But, when the Chiefs had Darrell Williams in the building, and then they went out and got Le'Veon Bell, who didn't do anything, but they still went out and got him. And the Colts had planned to have a three-headed monster with Mack and Nyheim Hines. You almost wonder if that situation would have been different if we had a full off season and these guys could get acclimated. And, the Chiefs don't care. Like, they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire because he was a luxury pick. Like, he can make our offense better. We don't need anything else. Well, they also aren't in the business of, hey, we'll let him take all his lumps because we're not really contending this year. If they trusted Darrell Williams, they're going to put Darrell Williams out there. But I just think with a full offseason, I still really like the player. I like the prospect. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy who I am going to be drafting quite a bit of this year because I still think he's a great fit in the offense from a talent standpoint. The fact that they got rid of Damian Williams is a good sign to me that they trust him moving forward. That is definitely a guy who I'm going to be in on this year, and I expect to get yelled at about it because people hold grudges in fantasy football.
I love it. I think that's a fair take. So I'm just looking up some mock draft data, right? Going in a similar range is David Montgomery. So these three are pretty much going in a very similar range. Yeah. David Montgomery, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and DeAndre Swift. They're kind of the three guys falling in. I'd say Swift is the higher of the three looking at the data of C. Then it's, Montgomery and CH are kind of, you can flip them. They're basically a pick them in the ADP right now, right? So given that realm, given what we saw last year, given the fact that there's almost no receivers going on in Detroit, and appreciate this could all change in a week's time. And then you've got Dave Montgomery coming off the season of his life, which who knew? And CEH, are you still feeling comfortable to take CEH over both those guys, or yeah?
Yes, and I would love to be able to tell you I am because in my long-term keeper league, which hey, we're all human. I haven't won it in 13 years, which is like it is a nagging toothache, that damn league. DeAndre Swift is going to be one of my keepers, and then the Lions dismantled their entire offense, and in addition to dismantling their entire offense, they brought in Jamal Williams, who, look, I don't think anybody here is going to say Jamal Williams is as talented as DeAndre Swift, but you know what Jamal Williams is. He's sure-handed. He can catch the football. He can block, and he falls forward. And Dan Campbell, who's currently chewing on chicken bones somewhere, is going to love that. Yeah. And it's just like I just have to examine the situation for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and be like, I know DeAndre Swift probably outplayed him last year, but I'm looking at the situation for Edwards-Helaire, and it is pristine compared to that of DeAndre Swift. The Chiefs they signed Kyle Long. They just traded for Orlando Brown. So you have that improved offensive line, which was a huge problem for them last year. All the moves that they made up front. I think it's going to be a good season for Edwards-Helaire.
Love it.
So going back to the Justin Jefferson thing, do you think we all overlooked that with him being a rookie wide receiver and the fact that Diggs was gone and we knew how they used the two wide receivers in Minnesota? Should we have been slightly more bullish on that from the get-go?
Probably, but looking at the situation, but like, I think everybody had the same kind of thought here, right? Yeah. Oh, Philly passed on him, and Philly really needs an outside receiver, and they took Jalen Reagor, who it's too early to write him off, but clearly not the best of decisions. And you look at Minnesota, where Adam Thielen's done a ton of his damage from the slot, and you're like, all right, good receiver pair, but is it really going to work here? And then he ended up having the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. Like, I think you could have laughed at people for fading Justin Jefferson last year and still not think he was coming anywhere close to the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. I think if people were to say this year heading into the draft that Jamar Chase is going to have the best rookie wide receiver season of all time, people might not laugh at you nearly as much as they would have if you said that about Justin Jefferson, who I think was the 5th wide receiver taken in his own draft class. Mm-hmm. So I think we missed on that. And I think the NFL itself gave us kind of reasons to miss on that. Judy, Ruggs, Lamb, and Reagor all go before him. I think it was fair to question whether the NFL had it right. Was he predominantly a slot guy? On the other hand, maybe we should not just rule out slot guys, because ultimately what college football coaches are trying to win games. And they might have thought Justin Jefferson was best in the slot. Hell, I mean, you put Julio Jones in the slot and he's going to eat souls too. But Ed Orgeron and Joe Brady are trying to win football games. So they're going to try to exploit matchups. They're going to try to get Justin Jefferson open. And I think we needed to look at the production. We needed to look at the traits a little bit more, and notice that just because he didn't do this in college doesn't mean he can't do it. It's the whole Justin Fields debate, and we'll get to him. Justin Fields didn't necessarily go through his progressions very much, but if your first read is open, your coach is going to kick your ass if you don't throw to your first read. So, it's one of those things where just because he didn't do it in college doesn't mean he can't. And I think that was a lesson we need to learn on Justin Jefferson, and know that Minnesota had a plan for him, and it worked out, obviously, to a huge extent. That being said, I think if you're redrafting next year, tabula rasa, get a clean slate out there, I don't know if you can reasonably expect a rookie wide receiver in a pandemic without a full offseason to have the impact Justin Jefferson had. I still am going to lean towards that being a massive outlier. And credit to Justin Jefferson. I mean, he had an amazing season, but we also have to make sure we're not overrating outliers and freak seasons.
Yeah, that's fine. You talked about the slot receiver. I think there's quite a few of them in this year's class, depending on the size and stuff. We'll get to them in a little bit, like you say. So with the draft being 3 days away, Joe, do you have any draft day or draft weekend rituals that you do every year that you need to have done for your draft?
Normally I'd like to have whiskey, but I mean, that's every day. But what I'm going to do this year is there's probably going to be I'm going to be doing some live streams, and on Thursday, we'll see about Friday in our Discord chat. And on Saturday, I'm going to be doing Sirius XM, which is kind of a tradition that I've come to really enjoy. I miss going to the draft. I actually haven't been to the draft itself since 2017 when it was in Philly. But I had done it at Radio City back in the day, and had a lot of fun doing that and interviewing prospects and stuff like that, which was a good deal of fun. But I just like to talk live and spit hot takes. I mean, why would you watch the NFL draft if you don't have an opinion 5 seconds after a pick's made? But for fantasy purposes, I just like to look and see how these pieces fit together as they come live. And, I know it's the NFL draft is legitimately one of my favorite days of the year. And I can't believe that, because it really, I mean, you're just waiting 10 minutes between hearing names getting called, but you get to formulate opinions in real time. And then 10 minutes later, that opinion might change. Oh, no way is Cincinnati going to take Jamar Chase when they already have T. Higgins and, he had such a great year last year and they already have, well, maybe Cincinnati does take Jamar Chase. We've been convinced for weeks that Atlanta's not going to be taking a quarterback. Well, what if Atlanta does take Justin Fields? You have to change those opinions on the fly. And I think that's the big fun of the NFL draft. But in terms of rituals, I don't really have one, only because I've just in wearing all the hats that I've worn here with SiriusXM and Fantasy Points and the websites that I've been on, it's typically producing content and building from there. And if I have time left over, maybe I'll enjoy myself.
I love it. I'm with you. I just love the NFL draft. I just think it's one of the most fascinating things. And what I love is the reactions afterwards, or even during, like the Pat McAfee show when Jordan Love gets drafted might be my favorite reaction to any draft pick ever taken, ever. I think Lee shared it. Brilliant. That's my all-time favorite moment to watch that breakdown. And I just think, see, I'm one of those that I loved last year's draft probably more than any draft ever, because I loved seeing people's houses. I liked seeing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I like seeing Zach Johnson's rent-a-desk wearing his dad's suit because it clearly didn't fit him. Like, I was like thinking, come on, dude, you got to get a suit that fits. And see Cliff Kingsbury put his seat up in his.
My lord, my wife really likes seeing Cliff Kingsbury's bachelor pad.
I mean, like,
she loves Cliff Kingsbury. A little too much.
I thought, like, wait a minute, is this guy like Tony Montana all of a sudden? Everyone's going to come.
Incredible.
I mean, that's what I loved about it. I'm gutted we're not going to see as much of that this year, but based on all the mock drafts going on now, the silly season now, I kind of ignore the final mock drafts because they get a bit silly. But in your head, how do you see the first sort of 5 or 6 picks going in this draft? Because I'm curious just for your opinion, see how you think it's going to go down. I mean, obviously one's a slam dunk, probably 2 is 2, but I'm keen to see where you think the rest of it's going to go.
Yeah, well, obviously, what's funny is there is I'm going to spoil this right now for you. Maybe I'll come up with something else. But you asked me, there is in the show notes, there was what's your hot take about the NFL draft? And when I saw that, my hot take was going to be Trey Lance is going to be the 3rd pick. Ooh, and then we get the Ian Rappaport report here. And I think Adam Schefter just had a podcast where Trey Lance has made things very difficult on the 49ers. Now, I'm laughing at this, and I'm laughing at this because I always, the notion when a team trades the way the 49ers traded 3 first-round picks to move up to number 3, the notion that they make that trade without having any clue who they're going to draft is preposterous to me. It's like a couple years ago when the Eagles in 2016 traded up to number 2, like everybody's like, oh, they don't know if it's going to be Wentz or Goff. They knew. Like, they knew Wentz was going to be the pick, and maybe they don't do the trade if Wentz isn't there. I think the Mac Jones stuff has been kind of smoke screeny to me, and we overuse that term in draft season that, it's a smoke screen, But my guy Tom Brawley, our betting guy at Fantasy Points, who is quite frankly just he's just one of the sharpest guys just in terms of common sense, And his question was, do you trade all that to go get a player who doesn't have those next level physical traits? Do you trade 3 first-round picks to go get a guy in Mac Jones when they're objectively, not to say they're better players, but there are objectively players on the board who have higher ceilings in Justin Fields and Trey Lance? And going back to the research that our guy Greg Cosell has done at Fantasy Points with his draft guide and talking about the notion that he's the most experienced quarterback in the class at play action from under center, which is a huge element of what Kyle Shanahan does. I've kind of always felt Lance was going to be the 3rd pick. So that's the guy that is where I really think this is going here. And my other take here in the top 5 is I don't believe Kyle Pitts makes it out of the top 5. I don't think that's happening. I think either Atlanta or Cincinnati is going to take him. And then the other question becomes, and I'm not sure where I lean on this, is Jamar Chase also going in the top 5? And that's a question I don't know if Atlanta's exploring trading out of that pick. Is Atlanta going to look at taking Jones or Fields or I guess Lance? I mean, it's no guarantee. Mac Jones is still the betting favorite to be the third pick, but the odds on Trey Lance to be that pick have plummeted in the last couple days. That's where the draft starts to me, is at number 4, because we know San Francisco's taking either Jones or Lance at this point. And I mean, I guess you could still say they could take Fields and put a huge smoke screen out there. But is Atlanta going to make that pick? Is Atlanta going to trade that pick? Is Atlanta going to say we've got Matt Ryan under this contract? Julio Jones, there were some trade rumors popping up today. Yeah. Do you take Pitts? Do you take Jamar Chase and try to extend your shelf life with Matt Ryan? Fascinating there. And then I still think we are not done seeing trades in that top 10. No. There was the rumor Philly could trade back into the top 10. And obviously what Philly did was pick up an extra first rounder next year so they can use that if Jalen Hurts doesn't pan out this year. So, I mean, there's so much intrigue here. We're heading into a draft where we essentially know who the first 2 picks are going to be. And anything else could happen here. I'd be surprised, but also not surprised at the same time. Like, is Atlanta going to just try to outscore everybody? Is Cincinnati going to say, this is ridiculous to ask, but Cincinnati just watched its franchise quarterback get broken in half last year. And could they take a skill position player over, Penei Sewell?
Yeah. It's going to happen. I just think more and more that is going to happen.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
The only way that doesn't happen is if Chase goes at 4. Yeah. I think if I've been saying this for weeks, I think if Atlanta go into draft night, if they go into draft day, still with the 4th pick they're picking. Yeah. I don't think they're going to put themselves into that position of, we'll see what late offer comes in. I just don't think as a rookie GM with a rookie head coach, I don't think they're going to put themselves into that kind of panic because that pick is so fundamentally important. And I think they're going to make that decision of, if we're still in it with 24 hours to go, 12 hours to go, we're going to take Kyle Pitts. I can't. Look,
he might be the best player in the draft.
Exactly that.
And you could get him with the 4th pick. Now, I mean, if I were starting a franchise, my pick would be Trevor Lawrence, but if Cincinnati had the top pick this year, they'd trade it. But Kyle Pitts might be the best player in the draft, and Atlanta could have a chance to get him at number 4. Yeah. Arthur Smith, is an offensive-minded guy.
And he's a former tight end coach. This guy knows tight ends better than anyone. He's never going to see a tight end better than Kyle Pitts. He knows what to do with that position. He knows how to utilize that position. It would shock me if they didn't go Kyle Pitts, unless they traded it. Now, if they trade it today, if they trade it tomorrow, if they trade it Wednesday, I get all the logic on that. But they're not going to trade to Carolina. The Patriots aren't going to trade them that much, and they're not going to want to slide down that far. The only team that can trade with Atlanta is Denver. That's the only team, and I can't see Elway going up that high. I can't see him going up the 4 and getting him. But I mean, they could do. I mean, this is Elway. He could literally do anything, and nothing would shock me. But
Denver's interesting, and that's the team I'm going to be watching because when you talk about rookie rankings here, I mean, I think 95% of people have Trevor Lawrence as their fantasy QB1 because of his talent level. The fact that he can run. But what if Lance or Fields lands with Denver? And then you look at that and say, okay, I think Trevor Lawrence was a far better prospect than Justin Fields. Maybe you're one who doesn't think that the gap is that big. Maybe it's Mac Jones. I think Lawrence is a much better prospect than Mac Jones. I think Zach Wilson's a much better prospect than Mac Jones. But he lands where he's throwing to Fant and Sutton and Judy and Tim Patrick, and you got Melvin Gordon who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Man, if Justin Fields with his running ability were to land in Denver, even though I have Trevor Lawrence as a far better prospect, for fantasy purposes, I'm very tempted to rank Justin Fields number 1 among this rookie class, just in terms of the situation. And then you have to wrestle with that is, why did the NFL not think Justin Fields was as good a prospect as everybody on Twitter seems to think? And I haven't seen nearly as much of that the Twitter like, oh my God, Zach Wilson's going to be terrible. Like in recent years, we've seen that so much where like people were convinced 2 years ago that Josh Allen was going to be the worst quarterback in the history of the NFL. And then last year it was, oh, Justin Herbert's going to be the worst quarterback in the history of the NFL. And, maybe sometimes the teams do know something. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. I haven't seen that nearly as much this year because I think people might have been like, all right, maybe there's something here I'm missing. But is there a reason some teams appear to have Justin Fields as the fifth quarterback in this class? And that's something you've got to reconcile with the fact that, man, if he lands in Denver, that's going to be really hard for me to not get hyped for fantasy.
All right, there he is.
He's got the
He's excited.
Is he a Broncos fan?
Yeah, boy.
I love, dude. I mean, I can't get that image of Justin Fields in Denver out of my head. I can't, and I have to feel like, man, if that opportunity arises, I mean, I feel like Denver fans would just revolt if that doesn't happen.
I feel the only person that can stop that is Bill Belichick.
Yeah,
I feel like he's the only person that can stop that and go to Carolina and offer him 15 and some picks and go and scupper Denver's party. It's the only way I can see it. But I just think it's such a fascinating draft. I literally cannot wait for it because
5 quarterbacks go in the top 10. Doesn't happen. I mean, no. We've had loaded quarterback classes in the past.
Well, look back to 2018. You had 5 going round 1.
Yeah, the last, of course, Lamar Jackson was the last pick, and I think everybody would be shocked if Mac Jones or Fields or whoever makes it past, to use 15. The Patriots at 15. So, like, you're going to have, like, that. I mean, I don't know if we're getting the same level of hype that 1983 had, obviously, the Elway to Marino class. But, I mean, it's that kind of loaded draft here. I think 1999 was the last time that anything close to this happened, and that was Tim Couch, McNabb, Akili Smith, Cade McNown, and Dante Culpepper. So that, I mean, this is that kind of class, and looking back to that year, McNabb and Dante Culpepper are the only two who were even worth a damn. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it works out better for these teams. But it also really, what it does, guys, is it kind of makes it hard for us to deduce where some of these other players are going to go. Pitts and Chase, Pitts isn't making it past 5, in my opinion. Chase, I don't think Chase makes it past 6, because I think if he gets to Miami, I think they're going to take him. But Smith, Waddle, those are 2 really interesting names too. And, you look and say, I don't think Dallas has taken another wide receiver. Could the Giants? Could the Panthers? Could Philly try to maneuver to get one of those 2 guys? That's where
Detroit don't have any.
But could Detroit decide, we're going to suck this year anyway, let's just take Sewell and at least try to get that building block for the future? So that's fascinating too.
Yeah, there's so many different ways this is all going to cut itself. I mean, like, I'm going to be a bag of nerves sitting there at 32, just watching the chaos and think, I don't like. It's the thing. I try to do mock drafts for the Buccaneers. I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, anything can happen because you just don't know. Like 31 picks and everything going on. I think this is probably going to be the most unpredictable first round, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 5-6 trades on draft night or on draft day do draft night itself.
Yeah, heading up in, right. What does a team get intel? Hey, we're fairly confident who San Francisco is going to pick here. I'm getting on the phone with Atlanta. If I like Fields or Lance or Jones, I'm going to get on the phone with Atlanta. That's something that can happen right before the draft as well.
I'd be shocked. I just don't buy this uncertainty that the 49ers don't know who they're going to pick. I think they placed the call to the Jets. I think the Jets said, I think they placed the call to the Jets all the way when the Jets were picking at 2. And I think that because if nothing else, it's in the Jets' own interest to tell the 49ers who they're going, because they know that the 49ers are getting a QB and they don't want New England getting a QB.
That's fair.
So there's no doubt that Douglas and, the two teams have had a conversation, and Lynch and Douglas have definitely had a chat. Lynch has phoned up and said, "What's it going to cost?" Douglas has gone, "No way." Lynch has gone, "I want a QB." They've had a chat. I've got no doubt that Lynch knows who he's taking and who's available at 3. And he's going to keep it to himself, because that's probably part of the deal to get the intel was cause a storm. Let's make this difficult, because we don't want the Patriots to make a move and get a guy. We want to keep this as tight as possible. It's probably Lynch doing Douglas a solid. That would not shock me in the slightest.
And by the way, Jacksonville's not trading one. So the Jets aren't in danger of the 49ers trading past them. So so the Jaguars are taking Lawrence. And so the Jets have their guy. They know who they're taking. They're right. There's no reason for the Jets to be like, well, I don't know, that Trey Lance, he's really, exactly. There's no reason for them to do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the incentive is the other way. I just think that for them, they've probably exchanged the information, and Douglas has said, "I'll tell you, but not only can you not let this leak, but you got to make this difficult, because we don't want the Patriots coming up." I mean, if they do it on draft night,
they're finally vulnerable. Don't let it happen.
Don't let it happen. Don't let them get the next Tom Brady. Don't let them get Mac Jones. That's probably part of the deal. Maybe they're going to take Mac Jones just so we'll get Mac Jones, and then that way we can't have another Tom Brady-esque run in New England.
Yeah.
There's a huge chance though that Mac Jones slides to 15 in New England. Just nab him then anyway. Yeah,
right. I mean, so what does the league think of Mac Jones? Then that's I laugh at the notion, and this is the whole reason. Like our guy Brawley at fantasypoints.com was just so logical. He's like, I don't buy the 49ers trading up for Mac Jones. And you might think he's great at all the processing things and all that, and maybe he is, but it's Shanahan's system, he can make any quarterback work. That doesn't mean you intentionally turn the difficulty level up. It's not like, we're going out to play golf and my buddy's better than me, so he's giving me 5 strokes. Like, it's not like that. If your system is that good that any quarterback can work in it, then why the hell wouldn't you want somebody who's explosively talented like Trey Lance? I mean, you could be a big Mac Jones fan and nobody's going to tell you, "Oh, I think he's explosively talented." Where does Jones go? Like, Philly might not be sold on Jalen Hurts, but are they really going to draft, Mac Jones at 12? Yeah, I just don't see that happening. So maybe the Patriots are looking at this saying, this is actually leaning into us being able to maybe make a move for Mac Jones.
Philly, I can't see Philly taking QB. I think they're just going to roll out the year. They're pushing all their chips into next year. Do you know what? They have so many picks this year. They're going to trade a load of those picks into next year as well.
Yeah, they could. And they could also, there was today, Adam Kaplan said he thinks Zach Ertz is gone before the draft. So maybe you get another pick. Yeah. Whether that's this year, they could use that also to just say, I think what people are saying here is Philly traded down from 6 to 12. Well, here's why. Their fans are pissed off because their fans are like, if Chase or Pitts are there, we're going to riot because those are elite players. But Howie Roseman's thinking, and maybe he's not thinking straight, but he's like, I just picked up a 1st-round pick next year to move back 6 spots. I could trade to 9 and take one of the Alabama trio, Surtain, Smith, or Waddle, and I'm not going to have to give up that first. So at the same time, I'm increasing Jalen Hurts' chances of succeeding this year, while also knowing that I've given him another weapon, maybe in a Devontae Smith, and if he doesn't succeed this year, I've got 3 first-round picks next year where I can go get my quarterback. That's what he's thinking here. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but that's a fascinating team too, because just because Philly traded down doesn't mean he can't trade up again.
No, although they could also trade down again,
which would really piss the fan base off. I'll tell you that. Yeah, Howie Roseman's not a popular man in Philadelphia right now.
No. And I think given what we've seen in the last sort of 12 months, it's not the biggest shock in the world. But It's amazing that this fall from grace with Harry Roseman, that 2 years ago, he was really much seen consensus-wide as the best GM in the league. coming off a Super Bowl win. I mean, that was 3 years ago, but still coming off a Super Bowl win, building that roster. And it's amazing to me how quickly I mean, we're talking about rapid decline, because it's not like he had the oldest team in the world and like everyone just hit the end and that was it and it's all fallen apart. I mean, this isn't going to be what the Buccaneers are going to be 24 months from now when everyone is done and the coach is done and everyone it's just
Brady
crazy.
retires, Arians retires, and everybody knows the Buccaneers sold their souls to do that.
Which is
nobody
worth
cares.
It.
Yeah, it's worth it.
It's already been paid up.
And like when it comes to Roseman, I don't think anybody is going to begrudge him. In hindsight, it's not great. But when you bring the Philadelphia a Super Bowl championship and you're a little let's say connected to the players who have helped you do that, Jason Peters and Alshon Jeffrey and maybe some of these older players who you maybe should not have extended. You can understand that, but here's the problem with Roseman. He hasn't drafted well at all. And, you know, I'm always of the mind, like, you know, the old Steeler and Packers, you know, we're going to draft them and develop them. That's a meaningless platitude to me, because drafting them and developing them, you know, like that's a catch-all thing. Well, you better draft the right players first and foremost. So I still think, you know, teams that underutilize trades and free agency are intentionally making things harder for them. But that doesn't mean that drafting isn't the single most important factor in building a team. And the problem for Roseman is the failures have been spectacular. You know, Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf is a spectacular failure. I have a little more hope for Jalen Reagor than I do for Arcega-Whiteside, but Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Hell, Jalen Reagor over Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins looks like a spectacular failure at this point. You know, not to say, look, Jalen Reagor, that team was broken completely last year. That's not all on him, you know, but like that's the problem with Roseman, because Philly's such a high profile team, and these failures have been explosive failures.
And trading up to get Andre Dillard. I mean, that's another one.
That looks terrible, because they traded up to get Andre Dillard just to pull one over on the Texans, who were there and then ended up having to take Titus Howard, who's been a better player than Andre Dillard. You know, like you could have done that. And hell, if they take somebody like Hollywood Brown, he would have been who's hasn't been great in his NFL career thus far, but he would have been a better fit for them than Dillard. And yeah, you're right. I mean, just like, it's not only is it like you're not finding value in the draft if you're Roseman, but it's your early picks have looked like crap recently.
The only one he's picked in the first 3 rounds that you could consider any form of success, and I'm clutching here, is Dallas Goedert.
Well, right, and he was a second round. And then, you know, and the year they won the Super Bowl, Derek Barnett, who's been a good player, he hasn't been great. Now, Derek Barnett's not the reason the Eagles are in the position they're in, but like even that, like,
but he was a reach at 14. I mean, he was a reach at the time at 14, but I mean, it's proven more so.
Do you know the only Pro Bowler that the Eagles have drafted since Howie Roseman took power back over from Chip Kelly?
Do you know what? I don't, but I have a funny feeling it's what? Not Jalen Mills.
It's Carson Wentz. There you go. I mean, there you go. So that's like, I mean, Howie Roseman's best first round pick in the last 5 years is the quarterback they just traded to Indianapolis because they completely fractured their relationship with him. And that's fascinating to me. Not to say Wentz is blameless at all, but I just think that's what makes Philadelphia such a wild card here, because, you know, Howie Roseman is super aggressive. You know, he's like, I've got to prove them wrong. I've got to stick to my board, and I've got to get us a good player here. That Philly is a team to watch on Thursday for sure.
I completely agree. Look, it's so good having you on. I just want to pick your brain for a few minutes, because
for sure.
Before we wrap up, just with regards to best ball, because you know you talked about, you do a lot, you have a strategy. Best ball is one of the fastest growing elements of fantasy football over here. We don't quite have the same paid opportunities to do that as you guys do. Some of the sites don't accept Brits doing it, some do, and they're getting better. But ultimately is something that is growing very quickly. People's concepts
Right.
of best ball and using that as a vehicle to draft. Given how much you do and the success you've had with it, be really good for you just to share some tips in terms of, just give us all a bit of a masterclass in terms of, and I put in the notes here some of the strategic differences between best ball, because some people approach it as if they're drafting like a redraft, or the roster construction side, where to take the gambles with those sort of upside picks versus those safe picks, and stacking as a concept, those sorts of things. It'd be good just for you to break through all of that and give our listeners a chance just to get better at best ball.
So 2 years ago, I had a really good best ball season. And what happened with that best ball season was, my strategy 2 years ago was load up on running backs early. Have I want 3 in the first 4 rounds type. Get my wide receivers, mix in a tight end and a quarterback here or there, and end up with 5 or 6 running backs by essentially I was bookending my drafts with running backs. I was like, I'm going to take 3 in the first 4 rounds, and then I'm going to take 3 in the last 5 rounds. And that's kind of how I was doing my draft. And that really worked well 2 years ago, because you might remember 2 years ago was an awful year for zero RB because none of the running backs got hurt. And so these running backs, these early round running backs, were hitting at massive rates. Last year, I went with the same strategy, and I didn't have nearly as good a year, because last year was a pretty good year for zero RB. McCaffrey gets hurt. Barkley gets hurt. So you have all these early round running backs who are going down, and Ezekiel Elliott has a bad season after, Dak Prescott gets hurt. So you have these early round running backs who are going down, and that really opened the door for zero RB. And our guy Scott Barrett at fantasypoints.com, and I really encourage you to go read his stuff. He did a study here where, first and foremost, he is a bell cow running back lover. He's like, I am not a zero RB drafter. If I have a chance to get my Dalvin Cook, I'm going to get my Dalvin Cook. If I have a chance to get my Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to get my Jonathan Taylor. But he also, his study of best ball trends over the last few years suggested getting one running back early and then kind of getting into the wide receivers is the most optimal strategy. And it made a whole lot of sense for me, because I do not want to be in the business of being overconfident that running backs are not going to get hurt. And I think this year I'm going to be doing that strategy. I'm going to be drafting wide receivers early a hell of a lot more than I did in years past. And I'll be honest, I am a late round quarterback guy, but I think in best ball, some of these guys are just complete cheat codes. And so what I want to do is I want to figure out which of these running quarterbacks are going to be the best values. Now, last year, I didn't draft Lamar Jackson at all. And, for 12 weeks, that looked pretty good. Then he ended up having a really nice end of the season. But now I look at Lamar Jackson's ADP, and he's really appealing to me. Because people are like, oh, he had a bad year. He was a fluke. He's a one-year wonder. I'm taking Josh Allen over him. I'm taking Kyler Murray over him. I want to find those guys, your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts. I want to see where Justin Fields lands. And kind of deal in with those guys and get me a couple of quarterbacks in that 10 to 16 range is probably where I'm going to be drafting my quarterbacks. And then you have to mix in the tight end position. I think Travis Kelce is probably the biggest cheat code in fantasy football right now. And I just think, and I'm fully admitting here, I have a tough time swallowing a first round tight end. Just aesthetically, I have a tough time with that. I might be like, man, that you look at the numbers, and you're like, Kelce gives you by far the biggest advantage from number 1 to number 2 at any position in the entire league. And I still have a tough time finding that, reconciling with that over Darren Waller, Kittle. But if I'm not drafting one of those Kittle, Darren Waller, or Kelce types, I'm probably just going to wait to go bargain basement hunting at the tight end position and getting 3 guys. Though I will say this, I do want to see what Kyle Pitts' ADP is, because if I currently have him right now ranked tight end 7, which might end up being low because I've seen him go as high as tight end 4 in some leagues. but I currently have him ranked as my tight end 7. I want to see where he ends up. But if he is consistently available in like the 6th or 7th round, I'm guaranteeing you he's going to be one of my most drafted players this year. And I wonder if he might end up being the cheat code at a position, guys, where we haven't seen this. We have never seen like a rookie tight end break fantasy football. And that might be a little too presumptive right now to say he's going to do that. But if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be this guy. So I don't want to miss that boat. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because one of the questions I put down is Skipted was in redraft, is Kyle Pitts worth a top 100 pick? So middle of the 8th upwards.
I say yes. Well, here's my thing. He doesn't make it past, to my mind, he doesn't make it past Atlanta or Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I feel pretty bullish on him in both of those situations. Especially if, I think Matt Ryan, they wanted it to be Hayden Hurst. He had decent success, but it wasn't great.
It didn't work out.
Cincinnati, he can end up being their number 1 receiver if he goes there. So, yeah, I'm going to be bullish on him in either of those 2 spots.
Okay. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. For me, it's I now have this. I'm either taking Kelsey or I'm fading the entire position because I back myself every year in the market. I do a streamers article. I stream tight end. I'm back to back with top 6 tight end finishes, streaming 30% or lower ownership on the waiver wire every week.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a position that just doesn't score. And you might get these guys that might be a cheat code, etc. But ultimately, for me, as long as you're not losing too much distance, and I've looked at the numbers and constructed it, Kelsey's the only one for me. And I'm like you, I don't think I can take Kelsey in the first round. I understand people that do it. I don't think I can do it from my roster construction. I just don't. Right. I can't swallow it because I think that leaves me too much of a hole at running back or wide receiver later in the draft. So for me, I'll bargain basement all day long because I back myself every single year. There's always a guy or 2 guys or 3 guys. 2 years ago, it was Darren Waller. Last year, it was Logan Thomas and Robert Tonyan. You just pair those 2 and you just rotate them every week. You came back with the tight end 3. Yep. Like the tight end 3. Like, and I know that Kittle got hurt, and I know that Ertz didn't really play, and Goddard got hurt, and all those things. But realistically, the position is so, unless you're playing premium, it's so defunct. I mean, it's getting to the point now where we need these guys to kick on in fantasy football because tight end's gonna be the new kicker.
Yeah, I don't want that to be the case, because we do need that kind of like catcher-like position in fantasy football where you need to balance the lack of talent with the fact that there are some elite guys. I am very anti-kicking tight end out of fantasy. Now, the hope is this year when it comes to tight end, that Kyle Pitts, is the kind of player who we think he can be. Maybe the Patriots get Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry, in the offense that they're clearly designing for them. And then the other guy is Dallas Goedert. Like, is Dallas Goedert going to break out this year with the expectation that Zach Ertz isn't going to be around? Is TJ Hawkinson, who's, the de facto number 1 receiver in Detroit right now, is he going to break out? I'd really like to see the tight end position have kind of a renaissance this year. And I wonder if Kyle Pitts is going to be somebody who's going to be able to angle that along here. I would love to see that. I'm just telling you right now, Murph, I am not missing the boat on Kyle Pitts. And my analysis was mostly from best ball perspective, because maybe it takes him 5 weeks to really get a grasp on things, but I just can't see depending on what his ADP is, I just do not want to miss Kyle Pitts this year and be like, oh, you are a moron. Like, why did you not draft him at 75 overall? I just don't want that to happen.
Makes sense. One question, I'm going to throw a curveball on Kyle Pitts. What if he goes to Miami? How much lower do you put Kyle Pitts if he goes to Miami? Like how many rounds, if any?
No, I'm not moving him that much.
Okay.
I have questions about Tua. I didn't see it from him last year, but he's coming off a major injury. And here's the thing with Miami, though. There's another team where, like, if you were to tell me he's their number 1 receiver day 1, I wouldn't be shocked. Parker's a good player. I don't know if any of us are going to sit here and say, oh, he's that alpha dog. Like he's your DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and tell you that. Like, I don't think Devontae Parker's not the player who's going to preclude Miami from drafting Jamar Chase. Mike Gesicki is not the player who's going to preclude Miami from drafting Kyle Pitts. It's one of those situations where I wouldn't be as excited on him as I would be in Atlanta or Cincinnati, but I'd still have him in that top 100 because I think he's kind of a situation-proof kind of guy.
Joe, you gave your spicy hot take that we normally finish with pretty early on in the podcast. Have you managed to come up with another one, or are you firing a blank on that?
What is my one spicy hot take for the? Okay, so my spicy hot take was Trey Lance is the third pick, which again is no longer a spicy hot take. Here's one that I think might surprise some people. It will not surprise Scott Barrett from FantasyPoints.com. Elijah Moore of Ole Miss goes in the top 20.
Oh, God, I hate that. I hate that.
Don't like him?
No.
Oh, he's an explosive player.
Where do I have him in my? I think I have him quite low. I definitely have him lower than consensus.
Yeah, I think there's like quote unquote, I guess the plugged in draft people are like, don't be surprised. Teams love this guy. That's my hot take. He goes in the top 20 of the draft. And, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets drafted before Rashad Bateman.
I mean, see, that's why I don't like it.
Yeah.
See, I have him at 6. I have him over Rondale Moore. I have him over Tilly Wallace, but I can't put him higher than that.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And who else do you have up there? So I have
Bateman at 2.
Okay, so you have Bateman above both Alabama guys.
Yeah, I have Bateman at 2. I have Waddle at 3. I have Marshall at 4. I think Marshall is he's the most slept player in rankings.
The problem with Marshall is this, and I saw Adam Schefter tweet this before I came on the podcast, was teams are super worried about medicals this year because they didn't get the time at the combine that they have. And with Marshall, now he might end up being a DK Metcalf level steal. I'm not, because the medicals were some of the reasons DK Metcalf fell. But I think he's somebody. Marshall, and to be fair, full disclosure, I mocked him to the Ravens in our draft guide in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes to the second round because of the medicals, and that's the thing that I'm worried about. Then there's that whole slab of late first, early second wide receivers, just like last year, by the way. Yeah. Rager, Ayuk, Jefferson, and then the Higgins, Pittman. There's going to be that group again, and this year it's going to be the smaller guys like your Moore, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney. You're going to have potentially Bateman, Amon-Ra St. Brown in that area. So I think there's going to be that glut of guys who go late first, early to mid second, where if you put any of them in that range, you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm very low on Toney. I think quite a few people are very low on Toney. I'm a Gator fan, went to the University of Florida. I don't see it. I just don't. I know he can make plays, but you have to have made them. You have to have made enough of them to demonstrate you can do it. I don't think he has, but we'll see what happens. I just think it's such a fascinating draft. I think we're in for. This will be one of the most memorable drafts, not just for the circumstances, the post-COVID and everything else, but just the talent rich, the storylines, the trades. It's going to be phenomenal. I genuinely can't wait.
It's going to be so much fun, guys. I mean, so what is I want to know your guys' plan. Like, I mean, it's like on at like 3 a.m. there, right? So like what?
Yeah. I mean, we both have day jobs. My typical ritual is to turn everything off, media off, sleep, wake up with no knowledge of what's happened. And I mean, everything off.
I see. Okay. That's fun.
And then watch it first thing in the morning live, and I'll fast forward the commercials. I'll fast forward you'll be amazed. You can shrink it down to about 90 minutes if you take all the gumph out.
Is it easier to avoid in the UK? That kind of like
not that for kind us, of new, I think, because people that are on our phones.
Yeah, just like on your phone. But like, I mean, I'm guessing you don't turn on like we have Good Morning America here, whatever the hell it is. Whatever the show is over there, and they're not talking about Trevor Lawrence. I'm guessing.
They might do. It has
Yeah.
become more and more newsworthy. I think if we went onto any form of sports channel, it would probably
Yeah.
give it a severe nod to it. We actually have a 24-hour a day NFL channel now over here, so we do have Good Morning Football. We have.
It's not. Do you have the NFL Network, or is it a UK version?
So, I mean, we can watch NFL Network on app. So we have Game Pass and we can watch Network, but we get access through our 24-hour channel. We do get some network stuff. So we get Good Morning Football, Total Access,
Great.
Pro Football Talk. I don't know what else I'm missing.
Yeah,
and
I was just like.
And then we have the weird blackout rule. So we have television games here that Sky Sports cover. And then if Sky Sports are covering it, you can't watch that game on Game Pass. So if the Buccaneers are playing, and it's different for the playoffs, but in the regular season, so if the Buccaneers are playing the Saints week 1, like it was last year, that game was blocked out. You can't watch that on Game Pass. You have to watch it on Sky, and that's a cable subscription. So that gets people's go up quite a lot when that thing happens.
I'm just fascinated by. I've never been to the UK, and I want. My name's Dolan, so like, I mean, I'm Irish.
Yeah.
So like, I need to mosey my way over there at some point. But yeah, I'm just fascinated to see that. I didn't know if you guys stayed up late or got up super early.
These guys do. These guys are more hardcore than me. These guys are. I unfortunately, with my job, I just don't think I can. And also, I got a little one, so it's a little bit.
I
more
need my 8 hours. I need my 8 hours. I can't I just can't do the. I can't do the. Oh, I'm gonna wake up early. I am a militant. I need my 8 hours type of guy. So I feel you.
I'll do it in the season.
Yeah,
a season, Super Bowl. I'll do all of that. That isn't a big problem for me. It's just for the draft, and it's like that is something that I can just watch that all unfold as if Stocks had seen it and I was texting him as I was watching it, because it was the year that Fant went to Denver, and I was like, oh my god, Fant's gone to Denver, and I'm texting him. He obviously knows what's happened, and I'm giving him my reactions watching these picks, not knowing what's happening.
Oh man, that's like 8 hours later. Yeah. I gotcha.
That's quite good fun.
Hey, Joe, man, look, this has been an absolute blast. Appreciate you coming on. Where can, if they don't already follow you, or fantasypoints.com, where can everybody find you? The website, Twitter, podcast? You just plug everything you want. Go for it.
Okay. So at FG, that's fun guy _Dolan on Twitter. So you can follow me there. I'm always tweeting about, I got yelled at about the Oscars last night. So, because I'd only seen one of the movies and I'm not that interested in seeing any of the others, but I'm always tweeting about stuff, mostly football, but other stuff too. Fantasypoints.com. If you don't mind me plugging, this is the last week of our 20% off early bird special. So come next Monday after the NFL draft, our 20% off special expires. If you want to pay me more money, hey, thanks. But I'm trying to get you in on the ground floor. Don't say I didn't warn you. And I also co-host the Fantasy Feast podcast with Ross Tucker. So we've been doing that, and we're going to be continued to do that this year. So I really appreciate you guys having me on. I am so sorry I'm so long-winded, but it's nice to actually talk to other people. You know?
Same for us. And you're a long-suffering Newcastle fan. You guys are going to stay up as well. So they maybe our fans here, we've got quite a few Newcastle fans who listen to the pod. So they can get in touch with you, and you can
away the lads. So I really need to get to a Premier League game. That is one I've never been to the UK. I would love to go to a Premier League game.
I will sort that for you. Look, I don't know if I can promise you a Newcastle game, but I do have a season ticket to Arsenal. I can get us a ticket to Arsenal.
Whoa, okay.
So
that's awesome. I would love that.
So you ever make it over here, I'll make sure that as long as the season's on. If it's not on, I can't help you. But
yeah, of course.
I haven't been for like nearly 2 years now because of the pandemic, and it's been weird. So it's gonna be weird just going back and seeing what happens. But yeah, it's so good to have you on. We'll have to have you on again at some point. But just appreciate the time as always. It's been enlightening. And yeah, do make sure you take advantage of that discount code and make sure that you listen to the Fantasy Feed podcast, because I love it. You've had a great run of guests on recently going through all the positions of rookies. So if you wanted a bit more rookie talk before your drafts, go check out the Fantasy Feed podcast. The last 5 or 6 episodes, you guys have had some stellar guests. So Scott Barrett was on, Greg Barfield was on, John Hanson was on, basically all your guys, basically. Just bringing them on.
Listen, Rush Nation, Joe has been an absolute star today. He said he was long-winded. We don't mind that one bit. Joe, thank you so much for coming on, man. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
An absolute banger once again, big man. You take it easy. The rest of the week looks pretty good weather-wise. Joe, thanks for coming on. Rush Nation, until later on in the week, don't forget, keep rushing.